Hello, I'm Dr. Spandan. I'm an osteopath, a dentist, and a craniosacral therapist. I've been in this field for about 13 years, and I'm very amazed at how things are formed and how things are created. How are we the way we are? How a baby is made? What is the whole process? How does it come about? So, this video is a little bit just an introduction, and I have fun when I learn things, so that's how I'm going to tell you. So, there's the mother, and the baby grows in the mother's uterus. Everybody knows that, yes? Now, the uterus is a very fun organ. It is like a muscular bag and it has two extensions on both the sides called fallopian tubes. So, considering I am a uterus, I am like wide above, narrow below, and out of me on the right and the left there are two fallopian tubes. Okay? Now, the fallopian tubes have a bend called the ampulla. तो क्या होता है ना यूट्रस के नीचे से भी ना ऐसे दो बर्ड्स निकलते हैं टू बर्ड्स कम आउट ऑफ द यूट्रस लाइक दिस एंड दे होल्ड समथिंग कॉल्ड ovaries are a reservoirs of eggs. Now there's a very interesting fact about ovaries. The number of eggs a fertile woman will release in her life is decided before she's born. So while a female baby is being created in the mother's womb, it's genetically decided how many eggs her ovaries will hold and release. So after birth, a woman never produces new eggs. So in a way, when your grandmother, your nani, was pregnant with your mother, out of the many eggs that got created in her ovary, one of them had you. So in a way, your grandmother carried you. She was pregnant with you also, along with your mother. So back to the uterus. So I am the uterus. There are two ovaries with eggs in them. And the uterus divides into two arms that bend downwards. तो भी क्या होता है? There are ovaries which release the eggs and the fallopian tubes collect them. Now because we have a finite number of eggs, हमारे पास उतने ही हैं eggs. They don't get created after birth. Remember? So the ovaries are very smart. They will release one egg every month alternatively. Okay? Now what happens is, now the ovary releases an egg. She's like, jao beti, jao. So then an egg is released from the ovary and the fallopian tube comes down to collect the egg. Okay, so the fallopian tube ends in finger-like projections which keep floating. So as the finger-like projections collect the egg, the fallopian tubes have happy cells in them which keep moving like this. They are like chalo chalo, aage chalo. So these are called, let's just call them happy cells. So once the egg is collected, the egg travels and sits in the bend of the ampulla. Now, if the egg is considered a princess, she sits and she waits. And while she waits, because she's a princess, she sings. Oh, and she keeps singing it. And this is the frequency that the sperms have to follow when a sexual intercourse happens. Considering that a sexual intercourse happens. So in every ejaculation, between 300 to 350 million sperms are released. So as the sperms swim up from the vagina through the cervix in the uterus, they don't travel in air. They have to crawl through mucus. So it's like we do that, rengna, wo rengte hain. So the sperms have to travel through the mucus inside the woman's reproductive organ. And while they're doing that, because they're foreign substances, the woman's immune system is triggered. So out of those 350 million sperms, the number of sperms that finally reach the safety of the fallopian tube is just between 10 and 50. So what happens? Once they reach the bend of the fallopian tube, they almost give, they're like, bas ho gaya yaar, rehne do, ab nahi hoga. Now another thing that happens is, as the sperms travel up, there is always this group of guys who are like a little बेवड़े. वो हमेशा opposite direction में जाएंगे. So there will be these group of sperms which will come and say, गाना यहाँ से आ रहा है. So they will start traveling to the opposite fallopian tube. While the rest will say, नहीं भाई, गाना यहाँ से आ रहा है. बोले, नहीं, हम जानते हैं गाना यहाँ से आ रहा है. So they will go up and they will swim to the opposite fallopian tube, which is certain death. There is nothing there. The egg is waiting in this. Now the 10 to 50 that reach the fallopian tube once they enter, they're very tired. But then the very presence of the egg, she is like a very luminous, rapturous, beautiful pearl. वो ऐसे मोती जैसी होती है. So the outer covering of the egg is called zona pellucida. Zona is the outer covering. Pellucida is something that glows. She's beautiful. And the size proportion between the sperm and the egg is about around 1:100 or 1:150. So the moment the sperms enter the fallopian tube, they can now hear the song clearer. And suddenly they have this naya utsah. And they're like, chalo chalte hain, manzil dur nahi hai. And they suddenly start whipping their tails faster. And they keep swimming and they're like, main aa raha hoon. And she's still sitting and she's like, ah. And they're swimming and they're swimming and they're swimming. And finally, when they reach the egg, they present themselves. They're like, madam. And then the egg chooses you. You can come and join me. So when that happens, the head of the sperm detaches. It contains the genetic material. There's a protein, there's an enzyme in the head of the sperm that dissolves the outer covering of the egg, and the genetic material of the sperm now enters the egg. And there is conception. There is a union of the genes of the father and the mother. Now when this happens, there's only one that goes in. It's like khulja something. And once the sperm enters, the door is shut. So the whole covering of the egg is now blocked to the entrance of any other sperms. So the ones who've been trying to enter, बाकी जो गार्ड रहे थे खुद को अंदर, वो तो फंसी गए. पर और भी जो आ रहे थे, वो भी उसके साथ लग के, now what they do is something very beautiful. The remaining sperms start to whip their tails counterclockwise. Because it is important that after fertilization, the egg travels from the bend of the fallopian tube, drops into the uterus and attaches itself to the uterine endometrium. If it doesn't do that, we have something called an ectopic pregnancy, which means there is just not enough space for the baby to grow, and that will not be a successful pregnancy. So it is important कि चलो मिलन तो हो गया, अभी घर भी चलो. So then the egg starts to roll down the length of the fallopian tube, and as it crosses the fallopian tube, the lining of the uterus is like velcro. So it attaches itself to the mother's uterine endometrium, and the mother literally hugs the child to herself. That's how it's called. It's like जैसे ही वो embryo पहुंचा uterine endometrium में, it sinks into the endometrium, and that area is now marked by a small mucus plug that can be later on picked up in a USG. It's so beautiful, There's conception, the egg rolls down, the fertilized embryo now rolls down, multiplying at the same time. And by the time it attaches to the endometrium, it's 5 days. And now that the embryo has attached, it's like the woman's life is completely transformed. Now she has moved from being a woman to a mother. The first 3 months are very crucial, but now the one that has attached itself now releases a specific chemical which can be picked up in a urine pregnancy test. Now, in case pregnancy doesn't happen, then you remember the princess who was singing, ah, and she keeps singing, and he doesn't arrive. And then what happens? Because she's a princess, she starts to cry. She's like, oh, he didn't arrive. And as she starts to cry, she starts to degenerate. And this releases a hormone called progesterone. Progesterone is like the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Chalo chalo saaf karo, koi baat nahi, kuch nahi hua, chalo chalo safai karo, safai karo. So all the endometrial lining in the uterus is now shed, and the woman now has her period. Once the period is over, the next hormone is released called estrogen, which is like constant hope. Doesn't matter, it didn't happen. Koi baat nahi. Next time फिर से try करेंगे. Let's get down to work. Let's lay down a new line of endometrium. But if conception happens, that baby now will grow in the mother's womb, and for the rest of her life will dominate the mother completely. I still do. I still tell my mom what I want, and she has to give me simply because I'm her child. But the whole magic of conception is so beautiful. Can you imagine those sperms that survive and swim up, then those betas that go in the opposite direction, then these who go, then they follow the song, then she chooses the one, and then the rest of them help the egg to roll down into the uterine lining, attach itself, and most of the times the pregnancy after 3 months, if the baby survives, if the embryo survives, it can lead to a successful pregnancy.